Good morning. Greetings from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sorry that I'm not able to be with you in person today, but grateful to be here with you virtually. And I want to thank Vivian and her colleagues especially for making this accommodation for me to be able to join this wonderful conference from afar. Peter Mckernon and I will share this presentation, Responsible Research in Business and Management for the 21st Century. I will present the first two parts, and Peter Mckernon will present the second two parts. To understand responsible research, we must begin with understanding the world we are living in now. After all, research is about understanding the challenges or puzzles in our world and finding solutions to difficult problems, both in the natural and social world. Here are some of the most commonly known grand challenges of the 21st century, and they are organized into two parts or two categories of consequential importance. The first category is related to the rapid development of technology, along with globalization and the rise of new economies. Technology has brought major changes in our lives. Artificial intelligence will replace many jobs and create new ones, requiring new skills and new employment systems. Social media is changing our way of life and even our reality. The internet has created many new industries and has fundamentally altered the nature of commerce. The second set of challenges is the legacy of the progress in the 20th century, namely industrialization that has depleted an environment, left the world with poverty, still even greater inequality. And some claim that terrorism and political instability today we see around the world are results of unequal economic development globally. Most of these challenges can be addressed by businesses. And that is why United Nations consider businesses as one of the major forces that can contribute to the achievement of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So you might ask, what is business schools, and especially business research, doing to meet the challenges of the 20th century? How much of business school research currently is actually addressing the 21st century challenges? The answer can be found in a recent article in the Forbes magazine with the title, Why Today's Business Schools Teach Yesterday's Expertise. It's a very telling title, isn't it? So one might imagine that business schools would be hotbeds of innovation and rethinking, with every professor keen to help understand and master this brave new world. Paradoxically, it's just the opposite. For the most part, today's business schools are still teaching and researching 20th century management and organizations. In fact, research is leading the parade towards yesterday. Our research is lagging behind, though not all, but more than desired, because of two problems that's been discussed for many years. The first is the problem of research practice gap. The goal of current research is to fill the gaps in the literature and not to solve real problems of business or society. Measures of scholarly success is the number of papers published in a set of journals, and not whether the ideas are useful for practice. This is the crisis of relevance. The second crisis is that of integrity. Our research has many questionable or engaged in many questionable research practices. They include choosing the best results to publish, making up the hypothesis after the results are known, fishing for significant relationships in a large set of data, and then find a question or theory that will fit the results. This is known as p-hacking. Studies have shown that more than half of the published findings cannot be replicated, and most of the published findings are not trustworthy. So 5 years ago, a group of 24 leading scholars from around the world, including all business disciplines, decided to do something about this problem or these problems. Professor Peter Mckernon and I are part of this group of troublemakers, hopefully problem solvers. We offer responsible research as the solution and define responsible research as scientific work that produces credible knowledge with either direct or indirect usefulness for addressing problems important to both business and society. And that is knowledge useful for students and managers to tackle the problems of the 21st century. In other words, responsible research is problem-focused and solution-oriented. The definition refers to two dimensions of responsible research: credibility and usefulness. Underlying both dimensions are a few of philosophy of science issues. Research involves scientific reasoning, which is a way to make sense of empirical observations. And there are two kinds of reasoning we engage in. The first is to make general statements about some specific observations. Since we cannot possibly exhaust all possible observations, we have to infer from limited observations what might be true in general. This is the method to generate theories as we all know it, which is a statement, or theory is a statement of how things are in general. And this is inductive reasoning. The second is deductive reasoning, which is to make specific inference from a general statement. A theory makes a general statement of what might be true. Suppose we can say that all French people like wine, and Pierre is French. Therefore, you can deduce that Pierre likes wine. This is deductive reasoning. And there are some challenges associated with both inductive and deductive reasoning. Some of you may be familiar with this 2010 study published in Psychological Science. The study shows how a body gesture can make a person feel powerful. And the researcher used 3 indicators of power: subjective feeling of power, confidence, a risk-taking measure, and body physiological measures using a saliva test. Okay? The sample consists of 42 students. Each subject was asked to do 2 poses, embodying either high or low power, each for 1 minute. And the researchers did a pre- and post-test. They found support for all 3 measures of power. Now let's take a look at this study a little bit more closely. Okay? So the study found that power posing increased actual feelings or physical manifestation of power. And they concluded with this general statement: all people who assume a power pose will become more powerful. Through claiming the general truth derived from the specific observation, the study, the authors became very famous in teaching people on how to become more powerful. 5 years later, in 2015, Psychological Science published a replication study. And these authors could replicate the result on only the subjective measure, but not on the other 2 objective measures. The replication study concluded that the original power pose study published in 2010 had a type 1 error. They wrongly concluded an effect which did not exist. Well, how do we know that the replication study does not have a type 2 error? That is, they are stating a non-effect when in fact the effect may be there. So can we draw any conclusion about the true relationship of either study? What if more study found that power pose effect? More studies, all right? So can we conclude that the general statement is true, that in fact you can propose a theory, confirmed theory, that power pose increases actual power of the person? Well, according to David Hume, a Scottish philosopher, the conclusion of neither study is to be trusted. Why? It's because the inference from any specific observation to a general statement is based on the assumption of uniformity of nature. Hume argued that this assumption is questionable. So let me illustrate. Suppose you see 1 white swan. You probably couldn't conclude that all swans are white, right? What if you see 10 swans, 100 swans, or even 1,000 white swans? Can you conclude that all swans are white? While Hume argued, no, because we never know whether there is not a non-white swan in nature. So we cannot assume that nature is uniform. In other words, no number of studies or observations can prove that you have the truth or that the general statement is true. But more studies with results consistent with the general statement improves the confidence that we have a better handle on the truth. Hence, replication is important and necessary to prove the truth of a general statement that is derived from empirical observations. So the more replications, the more confidence we have. Replication increases the credibility of the truth we claim from our limited empirical observations. So now let's move on to deductive reasoning. What might be some challenges associated with deductive reasoning? Deduction is to infer a specific case from a general statement. Now let's consider this general deductive inference. The theory is that red wine is good for health, and Johnny drinks red wine. So we can conclude, we can induce that Johnny should be in good health. So what are the risks with deductive reasoning? First, deduction requires that the premise in the theory be valid, that red wine is always associated with good health. Second, you need counterfactual evidence that a person who does not drink red wine is not in good health. But even if we cannot find such a person, it does not mean that such a person does not exist because of Hume's problem. The uniformity in nature assumption also is a risk in deductive reasoning. Clearly, there's a relationship between induction and deduction. First, the truth of most theories is unknown because they come from limited observations through induction. That is why they are called theories and not general laws. Then we can use empirical evidence to tell us if the theory or the general statement is true. But we cannot conclude that the general statement is true from any number of empirical observations because of the Hume's problem. Furthermore, social phenomena are complex and dynamic. So we need to keep testing until the theory is consistently supported or not falsifiable using Popper's logic. Because of this, all theories, especially in social sciences, are held to be tentative. No truth is definitive. This again argues for the importance of replication. From a philosophy of science point of view, the policy of journals that ask for novelty in every study and does not accept replication studies is rather puzzling, isn't it? Now next, let's consider one more issue, philosophy of science issue that's relevant for both credibility and especially for usefulness. And this is the issue of values in science. There are two kinds of values in science. First is epistemic values. They are the criteria for determining the degree to which the research findings match reality. These criteria may include all the validity and reliability estimates, the standard error and confidence intervals in the empirical estimates, and the verifiability of the findings. Second, social values. They are the preferences of individual researchers, a scientific community, or external groups that influence the choice of questions to study, the theory or the method used, and social values also play a role in assessing the cost of wrongful conclusions from the research on society. And we all know wrongful conclusions or unreliable results in biomedical research could mean life and death consequences. In management, it could mean money wasted, employees or customers harmed. It could also mean opportunity lost in the case of type 2 errors. In other words, there are real consequences for people and society if the conclusion from the research is wrong. So responsible research is about fulfilling two forms of responsibilities. First is through science. We must produce reliable findings and repeatable discoveries. This is the credibility dimension of responsible research. The second is to society. Knowledge from science should be to improve human life on Earth. This means positive business practices that contribute to human well-being and sustainable development of our planet for the long term. And this is the usefulness dimension of responsible research. Now, we all know society invests a lot of money into scientific research, including business schools. The expectation is that scientific work will produce knowledge that can be used to improve human lives. Ultimately, the knowledge from science is to be used to improve humanity. As Albert Einstein reminded us, making life better for the ordinary humans must be the chief objective of science. So we hope, the founders of IRBM, hope by 2030 that all business schools will have transformed into responsible research. So by then, how is business research contributing to the world? At this point, I'd like to invite you all to imagine that it is now 2030. How is business school being taught? Research is being done in business schools? Let's take a look. So I hope you're all looking forward to 2030. I certainly am. So you might ask, well, that's great, but how do I conduct responsible research? Well, the founders of IRBM formulated 7 principles of responsible research to guide us moving towards 2030. And to explain that, Professor Peter Mckernon will come on stage. So thank you very much. Thank you.